This is the GARIS Masculist MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 385, entitled Masculist Counter-Arguments to Feminist Arguments against Legislating the Para. That's paternity rejection right. This is part 2, carrying straight on. So, what if some stupid, child-minded, bloody fluffy who did not bother to get a career-competent education to do if she gets pregnant and the father refuses to have his life ruined by an unwanted pregnancy that could tie him up financially, manslaving him for decades? Question mark. She can keep the child if she has the earning capacity to pay for its upkeep, which is what the creation of a FIP society, as pushed by the Masculists, is aimed to do. That is, to force women to FIP up, so that if they do go ahead with the pregnancy after the father has taken his parrot right to not be a father against his will. This idea horrifies most feminists and most women, which only increases the hatred of the masculists against them, showing masculists clearly what women's real expectations towards men are, namely that
men exist on this earth to pay for women to have babies.
That is, women see men as cash machines, to be sexploited, to pay for women, so that women can be fluffy parasites, living in a middle-class house, raising her kids that he pays for. The para will destroy these traditional, probably evolved expectations of women regarding men. Men will see more clearly via the passionate opposition of women right across the political and social spectra towards the passage of the para. Men will see that women don't really love men, but love men's sexploitability, men's ability to pay for women, so that women can raise kids with greater ease, not having to make the same effort as men to bother to FIP up, to bother to get a career competent education. Men, in short, will see what parasites women are, how women evolve to be parasites of men, how women evolve to be prostitutes towards men, in order to be better able to bribe men with sex, so that men could be persuaded to give women men's scarce male-hunted meat, especially in times of starvation. The idea that women don't love men the way men love women is a mainstay of the teachings of the MGTOWs. They call it the red pill. That is, a piece of very negative knowledge that blue pillars refuse to swallow, to accept, given that its negativity is so harsh that they refuse to believe it. Women's tooth and nail opposition to the passage of the para will red pill millions of men, making them cynical, hateful masculists towards women, making them hate women, and rising up to exert their superior male physical force and superior intellect to force women into accepting the para. From my own experience, I do notice from the few women in my own social circle that they agree intellectually that men should have equal rights in the divorce courts, that men should have equal parental rights with women. But when I spell it out in bleak masculist terms, what the passage of the para will mean for women, they seize up, they freeze, they experience a deep inner horror at the idea that they may be forced to choose between 1. An undesired abortion. 2. An adoption, that is, giving away their newly born baby to another couple. Or 3. Paying for and raising the child on their own. This trichotomy horrifies them, but it is what the para means for women. Feminists will probably argue that if men get the para, then that will be extremely selfish of men, because it will mean that women will then have the burden of raising the next generation on their own. And since raising the next generation is to the benefit of both sexes, given that the very existence of everyone is due to their being raised by the previous generation, then men have the moral duty to help women to raise the next generation. Otherwise, the burden of raising the next generation falls unfairly on the shoulders of women. The feminists will argue that this is patently unfair and is to be resisted with all the political power that the feminists can muster. I see this as the main argument of the feminists, and perhaps of many men as well. What is wrong with this argument? Several things. Firstly, there are too many people on the planet, so that we are destroying ourselves with climate change. By giving men the para, that will drastically reduce the population within a mere generation, so male rejection of paternity can be argued to be a good thing for at least a generation, while the population falls radically to a new, much lower level that the Earth can sustain, no matter how much pollution the small human population generates. The other main masculist counter-argument to the feminists' rejection of the para is based on fairness, on giving men the same basic human rights that women have, namely that since a woman can have her life ruined by having an unwanted pregnancy, she should be given the right to reject it. The feminists saw this many decades ago, so pushed very hard in the 70s and even earlier in Japan in the late 40s for the abortion right, that is, the basic human right of a woman to terminate an unwanted pregnancy that would ruin her life. For example, if the child resulted from a rape or a teenage pregnancy, or she already had too many kids, or she was too poor, or she would have her lovely career ruined by an unwanted pregnancy, etc. Feminists have long seen the abortion right as one of the major pillars of feminist achievement, giving women the right to terminate, to reject an unwanted pregnancy that could ruin her life. Yet these same feminists, these arch-sexist, hypocritical feminazi bitches, then turn around and say to men that you have to pay for the pregnancy that you men helped cause. That is, an attitude of,
the man who penises pays.
Seeing men as cash machines to be manipulated by fluffy parasites. This attitude of women and feminists makes them hated by the masculists. It's so obviously sexist and hypocritical. It is so obviously not what is good for the goose is good for the gander. It is this deeply hypocritical attitude on the part of women and feminists that makes them hated by masculists, and is one of the major sources of male bitterness that is leading masculists to a sex war against women, and especially against the fluffy feminists who currently have political power over the gender laws. If these gender laws are not soon made men fair, then it's only a question of time before masculist soldiers will pick up arms and go to war against these sexist, hypocritical vermin who abuse men so badly. Such women should be killed. They are vermin, manslavers, sexploiters, abusers, robbers, callous towards men, seeing men as mere support devices for women's benefit, who think,
to hell with the interests and rights of men. Men can go fuck themselves,
is the attitude of most women and fluffy feminist hypocrites when it comes to the para, when push really comes to shove, with giving men the same rights as women to reject an unwanted pregnancy. I keep making the point that men will see very clearly in the coming years, as the masculists really push hard for the legislation of the para, what the true attitudes of women are towards men, namely that women see men as baby support machines, as cash machines, to be sexploited by women, so that women can have a much easier time of it when raising children, rather than having to toughen up by becoming a FIP and pulling her weight financially, not expecting to be a hated fluffy parasite of the money and labour of a man. Now that women can work, they must work. This is the mantra of the masculists, and the point to be driven home to women at the point of a bayonet, if necessary. If some woman told me at some public meeting in which the para issue was raised that men have to make their contribution towards the raising of children, then I would lash back at her by saying, quote, "You women have the mara. Men don't have the para, which is the most blatant form of sexual discrimination that exists. You women don't give a fuck about men. You give yourselves the right to reject an unwanted pregnancy, but you don't give men the same right, you misandrist, hypocritical bitch. If you were within a metre of me, I'd smash your fucking face in, you misandrist, male-dumping, feminazi bitch. You most hated category of female, you manslaver, you Untermensch, to be spat at, to be rejected by men, forced to rot on a shelf. Understand the level of hatred coming at you from the masculists, who see your sexist hypocrisy with murderous rage, with war talk, with sex war preparations. We men will take over gender politics, and if you feminazis resist, we will kill you. The lack of a para is a war issue. It is manslavery, ruining men's lives by the billions with a B. A major source of injustice and contempt as seen by the masculists. You women will fip up. You will vote with men for the men fairing of the gender laws, or masculist soldiers will kill you, because under the current gender laws, under the child-minded myopia of the feminazis, whole populations are being wiped out. Because you feminazis have made divorce so toxic for men that young men refuse to marry, reject paternity, and piss on fluffies, forcing them to rot on the shelf, shunned by young men, pariahed by young men, unspermed by young men. Be clear on this, you manslaving femalien. This is a war issue. You vote with men for the passage of the para, the legislation of the para, and for the creation of a fit society, or we masculist soldiers in the limit will kill you. This is a war issue. See this or die. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. Author of the book Masculism, Men's Rebellion Against Being Man-Slaves to Women, an e-textbook of 380 plus masculist flyers for men's studies courses. Freely downloadable in Microsoft Word format from my website.